episode 61. I know this because I looked it up on my phone about 3 minutes ago.
Nice work.
And today we are joined by Revatar.
Hello.
We're Not Wizards podcast. Good day, sir.
Hello. Sorry, I jumped in your introduction. That was incredibly rude of me. I should have just waited until you
were
finished.
remixing. You were backing vocals at that point.
He said your name, and you responded.
Pat's here.
Hi.
our other regular guest.
Hi, it's me. What are we talking about this week?
As prepared as usual.
This is a good start.
Hey. Now I've prepared a lot this week. Now I have my beverage to my left. I have a nice tall cup of tea, and I'm wearing what I just called the new podcast jacket. I am wearing a silken smoking jacket for the evening.
I've always pictured you in that.
This is not a work. I actually am wearing a silken smoking jacket. Pictures for Twitter coming.
I want to see this.
It's majestic, and I'm so happy. And I tried it on at Laura's work because she works in our vintage shop, and it was perfect. And I was like, I need it. Just buy it. I need it. Get it to me. Get it to me now. And it feels right. It feels right.
So that's all Paddy's notes done.
That's my notes. Just throw that shit to the curb. Woo!
Absolutely.
I've got 16 pages to get through, so we better crack on.
Yeah,
really.
crack on.
I've done a proper kind of lore analysis of this area and stuff like that. So.
Oh, marvellous.
Oh, cool.
I haven't really. I've just made up a whole load of nonsense, but we'll see how we get on.
I'm excited.
You see, I wrote some prep about the area a while ago, and I've completely not put it in these notes.
Nice.
But the reason being that I twatted into all the DLC stuff, so we'll do that instead, and we'll put the area notes in the next one. Because it's been a bit of a revelation getting this, no pun intended by the way, getting this kind of back on track. So we're hopefully are getting it back on track, but we'll allude to that later, I think.
But what better guest to get us back on track than someone with such just a steady output of work in the last few weeks?
Don't.
I mean, your scheduling is, existent.
I think I'm just lucky that I have a partner that's that goes out when I record. It's not a case. It's like I'm understanding. It's just like, oh, I'm off out for a couple hours. I've got stuff to do, and that's it. And then I get to sit in my studio as it is, with my Spider-Man picture on the wall.
Ooh.
And I get to record. But no, I don't know what's happened. I think, as I said in the last episode that we've just put out, I said I just blindly asked a whole load of people and then didn't expect anybody to kind of turn around and say yes.
This is a wondrous bookend, though, on with you praising your partner going out a lot after you sat down to record with us, and she put the washing machine on.
She used to see her whisper it going out the door as she went. Right, I'll see you later. Let's just see how much fun you have with your little online friends. And she quietly shut the door behind her.
She doesn't talk like that. She sounds like the child catcher from Chitty Bang Bang. Is she?
She could be. I'm not judging.
No.
But she does work in that kind of sphere of influence that if she did have to catch children, she would have the tools to be able to enable her to do so. And that sounds so bad, but it's not.
This is turning sinister. But I will sort of segue into the start of the podcast. So it's kind of nice to find out where people are, where they first learned play and adventure and books and all that kind of stuff. So growing up, what kind of kid were you with regards to that kind of thing? Did you draw or adventure, or did you get into board games early on, or was it video games or computer games, or what kind of boy were you?
I was an 8-bit kid, and I remember my dad coming home one day with a box and saying, "Kids, I've got something to show you." So it was just me and my brother at the time, and the year was 1983, and the package that my dad had under his arm was a 48K Spectrum.
Fucked it, podcast over.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there you go. So I had delights such as like Horace Goes Skiing.
Oh, blimey, that early on.
Yeah, Fighter Pilot. I mean, there was Burger King as well at the time. I mean, I sort of cut my teeth on the Spectrum 48K, scaled it up to a +2, scaled it up to a Mega Drive,
Wow, that's a huge jump going from a Spectrum to a Mega Drive. No Amiga or ST? Your family didn't go,
no.
We like this child, we're going to keep it and give it a Commodore 64.
They liked my brother more because it was him that got the Amiga.
Okay,
well, so tell a lie.
Did you drift away from stuff in the meantime then? Or
no,
did you just kind of keep on playing the Specky?
In between the middle times, I was playing the Spectrum for a long time. In fact, I was still playing the Spectrum about 2-3 weeks before I got the Mega Drive because it was one of my favourite games ever that came out called Switchblade by Gremlin Graphics.
Yeah, by Core Design, yeah.
Yes, and I was playing that, and then I saw I got a Japanese import Mega Drive because it was going very, very cheap for some reason. It was the maroony purple top as opposed to the white one.
All right.
And I think I saved up an awful lot of paper round money and sold a couple of things that I had at the time to buy it, and that was me. So I then got into a Mega Drive. It was the time of it. This is the best. It was the best time because you had all the little indie shops. This was before you had the likes of your supermarkets even entertaining selling games. So you go in and there was a plethora of these beautiful Japanese imports. So I was playing things like Zero Wing and Hellfire and Gynoog. Now Zero Wing will probably not mean a lot to a lot of people, but all your base belong to us. That's where it's from. That's where it's from. That is where that is from. So when people say, "Oh yeah, all your base belong to us," look at me memeing. I'm like, mate, I was there. I remember that booting up. So
in between those happening, were you into the arcades? Was there much of that sort of action going on around you, or was it when you went on holiday? Or did you read sort of magazines and look at the stuff that was coming to the Spectrum? And
I was a big Ure Sinclair fan. I used to I had a mad collection of pretty much all those magazines from the. I think it was the first. It was the first issue that they gave away a game, which was
cover cassettes.
Cover cassettes. It was like a game called Batty, which was
the Gremlin Graphics Arkanoid clone.
Yes,
it's amazing.
See, people read about this in history. It's like I kind of lived it. I'm quite old, but Batty was brilliant, and I went through Ure Sinclair, and there was guys, and then moved on to reading things like Meme Machines, so there was like Phil South from Ure Sinclair, and there was Jazz Rignall doing kind of Meme Machines and those magazines. So there's a lot of stalwarts that you probably see involved in the industry now that were starting out just kind of writing the kind of the reviews and stuff of the past.
Jazz Rignall came from Zap, which is where I first discovered him. Plus, when he was at CVG, I used to write reviews and send them to him just as a kid because I just wanted to send him reviews, and I'd ring him up, and the guy was the loveliest guy in the universe. Would talk about games like for ages, and then say, "Oh, I'm going to have to get on now. Thanks very much," and was literally like the most adorable person because he could quite honestly have just told me to shut off. But
was there not a guy? I think what it was a guy called Radeon Automatic who for a while. Now I get confused because obviously I'm getting old. So
I think he was on Meme Machines. Yeah,
he was on Meme Machines. So he started drawing cartoons of all the staff in this kind of anime type style. And he used to do like these little captions things, and then the next thing you know, they're like introducing him because he's moved down and they've given him a job. So he became a staff member. I don't even remember the boy's real name. I just remember.
Is that not picking up on kind of the house style from like Zap Crash and stuff like that? Where I still look on the fact that they would have a write up about the game, and then they'd have 3 different opinions. And then the scores at the side, and I know games have become much more complex in the modern day, but having those people that either agreed or disagreed, or it was great to see that kind of debate as a
And
kid, they all seemed like rock stars anyway to me.
Well, you got a famous writer, didn't you? You got your favourite writer, and then you would look at the top box and you say, oh, he thinks it like this, and then you look at the middle box and you're like, well, he thinks it's like that. But I usually agree with that guy, because the games that I've bought in the past, he's right about them, so let's stick with his opinion. So you've got like you kind of got more opinion, and it was opinion you could either trust, or you could kind of go, well, I've kind of, me and him never see kind of eye to eye. So it really developed, the personalities and people's likes and dislikes kind of really shine through. But one of the things that was always beautiful about Mean Machines and computer and video games and Your Sinclair was they used to commission cover artists to do the art on the front of the magazine. And nowadays, unless you get like your Edge magazine, a lot of them seem to be, let's grab a character still from the game, or let's use kind of stuff that we've been provided by the company. You can look at a lot of game magazine covers and you very rarely see something that stands out. Back in the days of Mean Machines, and even before with Your Sinclair, there was some stunning artwork that was on. They really took some time with the covers, and it made you want to collect them and hold on to them. Like
there was somebody very, very famous that came out of that era of covers as well. Not just Ollie Frey, but the guy who drew all the covers and did all the animated stuff for Gorillas used to do Commodore use of covers. So I presume he used to do like Your Sinclair as well, because was that the same company?
I think they were one house, and then did they not all end up getting kind of owned by Future? I think that was where maybe Future stepped in towards the end and started owning them. I think, but yeah. The only one that stuck out was obviously when Edge, because I got Edge #1, and I remember going into the local newsagents and flicking through Mean Machines, because it was just the local newsagents in the village. It was the post office, flicking on Mean Machines, having a look at Your Sinclair. By that time had about 52 cover tapes on the front of it. I mean, you could pretty much build a house out of it. And then there was this magazine which said it was in a plastic bag, and it had Edge on the front, and it said something like the future of video games is in the here, or something like that. And I was fascinated, and it was like, I think it was £3 at that time, which was ridiculously expensive. It was either £3 or £3.50. And it was ridiculously expensive, but you got it home and it was a rendered kind of it was a rendered front cover about the future of video games, and it was all talking about I think there was a piece on virtual reality in it as well. But the main thing was, I don't know who was editing at the time, but you opened it up and it was
somebody like Steve Merritt, or
it
something
might have
like
been.
He was one of the old Zap 64 editors. I want to say Steve Merritt or somebody along those lines, because it was almost like a step up from Advanced Computer Entertainment, ACE, which they had there, which I think they phased out for Edge.
Yeah, but then it just said at the top, it said Edge is not for everybody. And I was like, well, I'm this everybody. This is me. This is me. This is what I'm looking for. And then I remember the review section. They had a piece on them. They might have actually reviewed Street Fighter or Street Fighter 2. And they had a couple of Gunstar Heroes. I think they reviewed Gunstar Heroes in that issue as well, which was quite interesting. But that was me kind of taking on from there. I went through a phase of getting quite into board games for the first time. And I think there was a transition period between Milton Bradley doing things like Lost Valley of the Dinosaurs and Hotel and Escape from Atlantis, and then they produced Hero Quest, which came out of nowhere, and and they also produced Space Crusade, and that led me down the Games Workshop route instead. Until I went to university, and obviously you were doing a lot of introspection and trying to be kind of attractive to the opposite sex. So that time, the board games got put to one side. But I still I took a Super Nintendo in, and I remember being at university in the halls, having the door open, and people just in the residence just coming in and having a couple games of like Mario or Street Fighter 2, which was an American import. So you had the funny. Yeah, because it was like region locking was so funny. You could get around it by you had your cart, your American cart, and then there was a cart underneath that you put between that and the Super Nintendo, and then in the back you plugged in a UK cartridge. So it was taking the kind of the region specifics from that chip and then allowing you to play Street Fighter. Because I was playing Street Fighter 2, and Street Fighter 2 was going for £75.
Oh,
I know they were way expensive.
They were way expensive.
But they were thriving shops. I remember, like, there was one guy who ran a bunch of record shops around the East Midlands that used to was the only person I knew that got a Neo Geo, and I'm sure the games for that were like way over £100.
There were some
maybe,
of them,
maybe more, yeah.
200, I think. I remember them going. I remember them doing features on it and saying this is they're having a very, very occasional review on it, and it was just like it was £200, and you were talking about there was games that was like there was the famous Frisbee game on the Neo Geo, and it was still like £150, and then you had like Samurai Showdown, which at that time you're just like, this is an arcade in my room, and it looked fantastic. But yeah, you were right, they're too expensive, but still then £75 for a cartridge was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So then
I suppose they must have made sort of quite a bit on the on buying them back and like wheeling and dealing and second hand and stuff.
Yeah.
That must have been a thriving sort of business for those. So I remember the tiny one around Nottingham as well, which always seemed to have like bright shimmering stuff in the window, and I never knew sort of quite what it was. And then you might see the arcade machine like turn up in Skegness or something. You're like, oh my god, I saw that in that window.
I do remember there being when I lived in Edinburgh for a while, and I remember there being a kind of a second hand. It was for all intents and purposes it was a pawn shop, PAWN. Not the other, not the mispronunciation.
Not the fun kind.
It depends what you mean by the fun kind. Because this guy, if you remember, do you remember the when you were at primary school and you had your desks, and underneath your desk, some of the desks had like plastic grey drawers that you would pull out, yeah? Well, this guy basically had an entire cabinet of these plastic grey drawers. And he pulled them out, and he just had Super Nintendo game after Super Nintendo game. I mean, this was heading into like the it must have been the mid to late 90s, and he was selling them for stupid money because nobody wanted them. The N64 had hit the market, and people were selling their SNES stuff left, right, and centre to get a hold of Mario 64 at the time, and. And so you were able to go in, and you could go in with a tenner, and you could pick up kind of Secret of Evermore, or even like Secret of Mana, and I had a boxed Terranigma, which I bought for something stupid like £7.50 at the time, and then gave it away to somebody else, and then looked in eBay years later and cried for about a week and a half. So, and then from I had Mega Drive, then to Mega Drive I had a PlayStation 1, and then from the PlayStation 1 I pretty much stuck with Nintendo for a while. I was kind of like I got your GameCubes, I stuck with the GameCube for a while, I was with the Wii. I had an Xbox, an original Xbox for a bit, and that was the first foray into online gaming.
Big star.
And then I did take a break. I never owned a PlayStation 2. The Wii kind of kept there sitting in the background, and then next time I got into gaming was 2011 and 2010, 2011, where my work were doing an incentive and said, because you've done everything, everybody's done really, really well, we will either give you vouchers, or we've got some PlayStation 3s. So I got a PlayStation 3, and that was me back in to the fold. And then
So how did you choose your first PlayStation 3 game after kind of almost sort of stepping away from things to a degree?
It was interesting because I got the PlayStation. When I got the PlayStation, it was that's Paddy falling asleep off his chair.
I'm here. You said PlayStation. That's me waking up.
shocking.
It's true though. I mean, it's an old timer. I mean, CJ's probably going, I wish I'd asked somebody that wasn't 41. Because I'm getting that. I'm getting it's like reading through the history of video games, actually having it read to me.
The British history of video games is something that deserves to be celebrated, and it's a bee in my bonnet that whilst a lot of the American publications seem to think that gaming started with the NES, and all of these games are getting renewals or remasters or getting put on stores that you can buy really, really cheaply. And yet there's a whole history of British gaming which is just left to emulation. And it's, the likes of your Head Over Heels, your Whiz Balls, the start of Ocean buying up film scripts as they were then. The film wasn't even near to being made, and you got your RoboCops and your Untouchables, and it was a magic time for gaming.
I lived through that. I remember playing RoboCop when there being digitized music at the beginning, and going, and then it spoke. When you pressed the button to start the game, it went Revatar, and I went, wow, this is the best.
One more, give me that again.
Revatar.
on the Commodore 64, I think it was this programmer called Dave Collier, who's the first guy to do. I think it was something like Mode 3, and it was when you took a blocky regular sprite, and then you took a sort of Spectrum-like super detailed sprite, and then you put one over the other, and it kind of smoothed off the edges of the blocky sprite and made things look a lot more detailed. So I think RoboCop was the first time that was done, and then it became kind of a bit of an industry standard and a push on for the 64.
It was kind of like masking technology, because I remember I played the Total Recall game, and there wasn't any. What you used to get in the Spectrum was you used to get attribute clash, where if two colours were too close to each other, they would flicker in and out of stuff. So you kind of used to get that, and they invented a way of allowing that to have almost like a black outline round the back of it to stop that from kind of happening, so the colours didn't clash. But to go back to your question about the PlayStation that I got, the PlayStation 3 came within. We got it the second week into December because it was like a Christmas. It was a Christmas incentive, yeah. And then my birthday is like a couple of days before Christmas.
Ooh,
so
which day? Me too.
It's the 21st.
Dude, really?
Yes.
Birthday pals?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now kiss.
Kiss. It's crap, isn't it?
It depends, because when you get to this age, you're a bit philosophical. Do you know what's really cool though? 40's good, because I got a PlayStation 4 for my 40th. So that was a good birthday. It'll probably be rubbish for you.
I'll get a PlayStation 6 by the time I get there, so fine.
Laura went, Patrick, got you a present. And you're like, whoa, big 40, here we go. PlayStation 4 for you. Not even the HDR version, just the standard bog one that doesn't even work with anything anymore. Do you know what I mean?
And it was my old one that she's kept.
Yeah. So, no, so the 21st came round, and my wife's kind of like getting asked by my brothers what I want for my birthday, and so they got me like an Uncharted 3.
Okay.
So I got that, and and that was me. So I started playing that for a while, and then there was things like Flower, which I played that for a bit, which was quite interesting. But it wasn't until I got the really big game that kind of totally bit into me was Dark Souls. June, I remember it. It was like 2012, and I know Dark Souls had been out for a while, but I hadn't had my PlayStation for that long, or had been kind of used on and off, and a lot of people I knew were kind of talking about it on games forums and stuff like that, and they were using kind of like code words and stuff. So they were saying if you took down CAD, no, he's I can't get past those dogs. It's an absolute pain. I just can't get past those dogs. They get me every single time. And I'm fascinated. I'm like, what are they talking about? And it's like, and then they're going, praise the sun, man. Yeah, praise the sun.
So which forums were you on, and how active?
There was it was the old Edge Online ones.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and I was kind of on that, and then I decided to jump in and play it, and that was me, Dark Souls up, basically. So I've been lucky because my journey with Dark Souls has basically been Dark Souls, really quickly followed by Dark Souls 2, really quickly followed by Scholar, and then really quickly followed into Dark Souls 3. And in the background, I've been playing the board games quite a bit. That became something that was kind of happening. I really got seriously back into it about 2.5 years ago when I was, to be honest, I was sitting there going, do you know what? I really need to get out there and meet more people than what I'm meeting at the moment. And so I put my heart on my sleeve, and I had a couple of board games, and I went along to a local club and kind of introduced myself, and that was it. And that's where me and Colin kind of first met, and then February this year we started the podcast. We started We're Not Wizards, and it's been magic ever since. So it's a board games club, or because in the back of my head, like I just imagine like. Do you like Games Workshop? Have you ever played with miniatures before? What are you two talking about? Anybody comes up and is like, I'm talking about football. Shopping.
So to
painting the figures with neon paint in the back.
To sort of jump back to the board game stuff, were you a close-knit family when you were a kid, and did you play like just regular board games, or was it sort of more in the teenage years when kind of Games Workshop, Dungeons and Dragons and stuff tickled in?
No, I mean we were always, and me and my brother when we grew up we were really quite close, and we were really quite close, and my mum was quite protective, so she wasn't one of these people that let us just go out and wander the streets back in the day, so we did end up, we played a lot of Lego growing up. And then naturally when the kind of board games started to get more interesting, we played for Monopoly. I mean, every kid's played Monopoly. But I remember spending afternoons playing Monopoly, which was good fun. But then it wasn't until games like, as I say, I think the first one was Lost Valley of the Dinosaurs. And you opened the box and it was a flat board, but then there was a big, massive plastic volcano that you took out the box, and then you had little lava counters. It's worthwhile Googling to have a look at it. It's like, and then it had little T-Rex dinosaurs that used to wander around the board, and you had a little miniatures yourself, which was like a guy in one of those safari hats from Zulu.
Oh yeah, I don't remember this.
Yeah, with a little gun, and you used to move around, and there was a little next to the lava. There was a pterodactyl that was in the nest, and it was the first game where you threw a dice to move your character around the board because you were meant to collect treasure or something like that, and then you would draw a card and it would tell you what was happening. So you get like, I think it was a lava flow or an eruption, and you would add on extra pieces of little plastic lava to the board.
Yeah, I can see that
and
on the Google images. I'm sure this is the sort of stuff they used to advertise on TV as well. There'd be like some live action footage of some Christopher Biggins type like wandering through like a plastic jungle,
exactly.
And you'd see like a cartoon dinosaur and him jump back, and then they cut to the game and that it was due out for Christmas.
And then you would get like
a child going, "What?
This looks really good."
You get the guy in like the gruff voice going, "In the jungle, there is only one thing. There is fear." And it's like, but it's not in a jungle, mate. It's on a plane and there's a volcano. But yeah, that was fun. And then there was Survive. There was Escape from Atlantis, which again was big solid plastic pieces. So you had like an island, and there was like big grey rocks, and there were smaller green ones, and then there was smaller yellow flat kind of hexagonal ones. And what you would do is you would turn over the pieces, and underneath it would have a little symbol of a sea creature. So you got like an octopus, or there was like a shark, or there was like an octopus, or there was a shark, or there was a whale. And you also got boats as well. So
this is Waddington's again. I'm wondering if it's the same guy that kind of designed all of these.
Yeah. I mean, and there was Hotel as well. I think they went through a phase where I think board games needed a kick up the butt at that time, because there was either that, or there was kind of the really boring kind of Guess Who had been around forever. Or if you didn't play Guess Who, you played Monopoly, and if you didn't play Monopoly, you played Cluedo. And nobody really knew how to play Cluedo properly, and nobody really knew how to play Monopoly quickly. But yeah, so and that stayed in the background. And as I say, then the next thing that came up was in the catalogue, and that was Hero Quest. And then that was me, I was in love with that. And me and my mate sat and played that for months, if not years. Campaigns, making up our own stuff, because the miniatures were really good, and that was kind of like a gateway drug into Games Workshop, because they put a little catalogue inside to say, oh, if you like this stuff, you can go to Games Workshop, and that was that.
Did you used to play the Choose Your Own Adventure books?
Yes, of course.
Those were somewhat of a staple.
Used to go down to, there was a bookshop. This is like, what is this, welcome to 1980s nostalgia, as we take you a look as children, how we used to live. There was a programme on the telly, a children's educational one, called How We Used to Live, and it used to be about World War II and what happened to it. This is the 1980s version of How We Used to Live, because it was. And we take Richard. Richard's going for a walk. He's going into a local bookshop that contains a number of books. Oh look, he's going to the shelf. Here's a new book. You don't just read that all the way through. You start at the beginning, and then afterwards it gives you a choice on a page. Look at Richard as he's trying to fight a dragon using a dice. And yeah, I mean, that was it. I remember, it's like, yeah, take a trip into my psyche. I remember sitting in primary school, and it must have been about primary 6, primary 7 when these books came out. In fact, it was maybe primary 5. And I remember the teacher banning these fighting fantasy books, because you used to have like so she could get her work done. She used to like have like book reading hours. So you'd have a book, and if you didn't have a book, then you'd have one on the shelf. But people started bringing them in, and what used to happen was that she would. What used to happen is that she would be sitting at her desk trying to mark her work and trying to do her reports, and then all you would hear in the background was this.
You must have looked mental, like the class of the damned, just like.
Well, it was
just like turning all over the place
at the beginning.
That would have been an amazing lesson, though, if she'd have been a decent teacher that was clued up, and she got somebody to read from it, and she got to a point where there was a quandary, and she got the class to decide where they were going to go next.
Well, this is
amazing.
This is where it gets interesting, because she wanted to ban them. And she was like, she didn't understand. She didn't understand that we were reading and we were kind of playing at the same time. So it didn't kind of. She was oldie style teacher. She was a lovely woman at the time, but it was just a concept that was alien to her. So she was like, "Why are you enjoying yourself? What are you doing? What's going on? Why is there no swallows and Amazons?"
Back in my day, we were either down the mines or up chimneys or dead from wars.
Why are you smiling? This is a book.
Exactly. You get yourself back and pick up that copy of Willard Price's Lion Adventure right now.
And you understand the symbolism now.
But yeah, so first of all, there was like a couple of us, and we used to go in and we used to and my parents were fascinated, because obviously before then it was like, "Can I have a Star Wars toy, Dad?" Because I grew up at the time when Jedi was out for the first time before Lucas ruined them. And then he says, "Oh, Dad, can I get this book? Can I get Death Trap Dungeon? Can I get Warlock of Firelock Top Mountain? Can I get Freedom Fighter?" And then, so the class, more and more people bought the books, where it got to the point where everybody's flicking them through, and the teacher's like, "Enough!" And then one of the deputy heads came in and said, "I'll tell you what, right, let's do this." And he did exactly what you suggested, CJ. He sat down with the book, and he said, "Okay, this is what you'll do." He says, we'll read this book. I've just gone out and got it, and it was the first sorcery book. It was the Shamutanti Hills. Now,
yeah.
I think as a quick aside, the sorcery there's a game out that I've seen people really, really kind of enthusing about on Twitter, and I think it's the 4th sorcery book, the Crown of Kings, has come out. But what he did was he took the book and he said, okay, what we'll do is I'll read it out. When we get to a point where you make a decision, we'll vote. So,
that's really cool.
So what you do is he says it's fine, we'll stop, and he says, and then we'll discuss it for a minute, and then we'll vote what we're going to do and things like that. And it kind of led to really, really big debates and some quite angry kind of debates. No.
This is awesome.
What did I do? Did I pick up the locket? No, don't pick up the locket. It'll be poison. And then it was down to the spells, because the sorcery books were the first ones that had spells in them. And what it did is it's like you could say you could attack people, so you had your skill and your stamina, or you could launch a spell, so you could have like it would have hot, zap, fuzz, wall, and things like that. Wow, yeah. And it turned you to certain pages. But Jackson and Livingston were so clever that they sometimes put in they put spells that didn't actually exist in the game. So you would go like that, hot, hit, and you go hit. Oh, that sounds good. And it say turn to page 379, and you turn to page 379, and it says, you wiggle your fingers, but nothing happens. And it's like the scorpion attacks you. You must attack him with your sword instead. So yeah.
I remember that because at the start of the book there's that little paragraph that says, right, read the spell list at the back. You can only read it once. When you're happy, close it, never look at it again. Exactly.
And they also had printed dice on each page. So if you didn't have it, because this is the other thing that when people, because it moved into us starting to play sorcery, and sorcery needed you to have a set of dice. And it needed you to have a set of dice no matter what kind of fantasy fight game you're playing, your fighting fantasy game you were playing. And that's what really rattled the teacher. It wasn't just the pages, it was the occasional rolling of the dice. And sorcery had the dice printed at the bottom of the pages, so what you could do is if you needed a dice roll, you would just flick through the book and stop it randomly. And of course, me being 9-year-old me soon learned where the best dice rolls were in the page. You could just, it was almost like a magician going, stopping the deck of cards at the right time so you can pick the planted card kind of thing. Is this your card? Zink, like that.
Is this the way you paint your corruption, is it? I was just like a wizard. No, you were a cheat.
I was just a cheat. And I was very, very good at it. I should have been a thief. But yeah, jester. So that was that. Yeah, those were really, there was really good books, and then they stopped kind of towards the end. And there was also I also remember the Grail Quest books, which mixed the normal kind of the normal kind of seriousness that Jackson and Livingston were trying to get across, but they also put a lot of humour into it as well. So it was quite funny at the same time. So it made it even more enjoyable. So it's like, if you fail, you trip up and land on your face kind of thing, and you're just like, this is unreal. These aren't serious. These are really quite fun. So that was quite good.
Do you remember what your first one of those books was?
It was the. I'm trying to think. It wasn't the Warlock of Firetop Mountain, even though I read it. I think the first one I owned properly, there was the car one, which was called, I think it was either called Freedom Fighter or Highway Fighter or something.
I think it's called Freedom Fighter. I've got it in my back room.
And it's a red Chevy with different spikes and stuff sticking out.
Yeah.
And the spikes coming out in the car, and there's a guy standing with a gun, and there's a woman with some kind of shocking semi hairdo with too much makeup in black leather. And it got in trouble because the cover got in trouble because I think they didn't credit the artist, and they just basically says, oh, we like this art, we'll take that. Because at that time they were being quite successful. But that one had an interesting one, and it had fuel, so you were meant to count the amount of fuel that you had left. And if you drove too far without getting any fuel, you would run out of fuel, and then that was you were a bit stuffed, kind of thing. So that was kind of cool. This is welcome to history of pop culture and where it's come from. It is interesting though that what we've done is we've done a complete revolution, and now we're back at games that are being based on books that I kind of grew up with 30 odd years ago now, which is very, 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 very strange.
I always think it's fun to find out sort of where people kind of emerged from, and their love of games and adventure and books and all that kind of stuff, because it leads them through to the series that we're all here to sort of talk about. So in the next part we will talk about the Souls games.
Yay.
So you say Dark Souls was the first of the Souls games that you played?
Yes.
What led you directly to Dark Souls beyond sort of coded forums, coded forum messages enough to kind of go, I want to find out more about this, and I want to buy it.
You notice that when there's a forum in a place, and you notice that a thread is always going up by its popularity, by the number of people are posting in it. And it was always there at the top. It wasn't. It didn't even need to be stickied. And there was people that were talking about. They were going on and they were saying, I'm doing a 1 bro run. And it's like, well, how far you got? Oh, I've got to 4K, and I'm using my hand axe, and I've been to CV, and I've got my my hand axe is +7 or +5 with fire now, so I'm sorted out. Or do you think you'll be able to take him? I've had 2 attempts and I've kind of wrecked it a bit so far. And I was like, this is English. I know this is English because I recognise these words. But somebody's talking in something complete. And then there was ones like, there was, and you didn't have you didn't have many YouTube videos, but it was when there was lore, and people would spend pages talking about the lore of the game as opposed to playing the game. Because normally in a lot of the games forums, you're reading down things and people are saying, well, I've found that the mechanics and the balancing in here just doesn't work. I don't seem to have enough ammo, and the guy's like a bullet sponge, and the graphics are jarring, and I'm getting screen tearing. In the Dark Souls one, you're getting people talking about, well, what happens to the Silver Knights when Anor Londo goes dark, kind of thing, or where's what's the story behind Ornstein, kind of thing, or they were real kind of getting to real deep discussions on that. And then when anybody used to start up playing a game, they always used to say, now remember, when you're in Firelink, make sure you get the hat down the well, which which was basically, it was like the best. Well, of course, Dark Souls is famous for its trolling. I mean, but one of the things was, make sure you get the hat down the well, that'll really help you. So there was people that had said, I've still not managed to jump down there. What angle do you use? How do you get down there? Managed to get down there, you absolute shower of so you would get that. And I was fascinated by that, and I ended up just picking it up. I think I just got it on Amazon, and it was ridiculously cheap. And after being in a situation where I had spent, I guess, a lot of time just playing through games and not feeling anything up to, I still remember fighting up against fighting the Asylum Demon for the first time. And then I remember obviously taking out the Taurus Demon for the first time, because I think everybody remembers where you were with that. And I think I played through. I started Dark Souls in the beginning of the summer, and I had it finished by October, and then there was talk of Dark Souls 2 coming out. So I waited with bated breath and jumped from Dark Souls 1 to Dark Souls 2. But in the meantime, I still played it, and this was the fascinating thing for me, was that it was never ever quite a game that you ever put down.
It's hard to let it go.
You'd have a build, and then you'd have a build to say, right, okay, this is my build that I'm going to be using when I go down the depths, or I'm going to go and co-op the Gaping Dragon for a bit, or I'm going to co-op this boss for a bit, or I'm just going to muck around and see how quickly I can get through somewhere, or is there different routes? Can I even break the game, or do I just sit there and kind of watch kind of lore videos and stuff like that as well? So it was really, really kind of,
So amidst that, were you kind of existing in the immediate, or the fact that you're enjoying the game and you were absorbing all of these different play styles and influences, or was it kind of a touchstone to the stuff that you'd grown up on, like the fighting fantasy books and the Games Workshop stuff? And
I think it was nice to be back into a place where you're kind of really, really interested in it. I think there was a lot of I guess I hadn't felt the kind of same kind of love and need to play something since I'd played like say Secret of Mana, or A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo. There wasn't any games I didn't remember even obviously GameCube. There was a few GameCube games that were good. You were picking up, but the Wind Waker, I never really got into the Wind Waker. So Dark Souls for me was filling me with the same kind of almost nostalgia that I had for like playing Secret of Mana, and I remember just sitting there and being able to chill out and just you knew exactly what was happening. You kind of knew exactly what was going on. So I had that kind of realm of nostalgia about me, which was quite cool.
So what kind of build were you generally for Dark Souls? Do you remember?
I was always a strength build. I was rubbish. I was generally rubbish on a toe-to-toe. What I would do is I would go in, I would like to smash somebody over the head and run out again. So I like to have a kind of a lot of strength but not have the heaviest armour in the world. So I'd never rock a Havel. I'd never have a Havel build. I'd never have the Dragon Tooth. I liked I used to go for something kind of relatively light with a decent kind of armour on it. But I used to use the Lucerne a lot.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That was generally... It was either the Lucerne or it was the Zweihander. But I started off with a Zweihander and I always ended up using the Lucerne with the fire build on it. And really, really liked it. I really, really liked its moveset and I liked the damage that it did. And it was also a lot quicker than the Zweihander for kind of attacking people as well. Never did an awful lot of PvP. But then by that time, I mean, you're looking at 2012, so you're looking at 2013 kind of thing. So the PvP build in playing in Darkroot was pretty much, it was Ganker's paradise really. I mean, if you went in there looking for a fight, it was usually the same thing. You would be summoned as a forest guy, and you would go in and you would instantly, there'd be two guys up to their eyeballs in Havel armour, kind of spamming you with like whatever. Probably Wrath of the Gods. It was probably that Jeremy Greer boy.
Oh God, yeah.
He's the worst.
Hate that guy.
He's the worst. Can we have our "He's the worst" minute? We just gonna go. He's the worst. No, I Jeremy's. I really like Jeremy. So there you go.
Jeremy Greer lives in the forest, exists in fear. That's the people often say. What's the sort of standout moments for you then in your playthrough of Dark Souls?
Beating Mr. Ornstein and Schmo single-handed without summoning.
Go on, son.
I think that was it. I think I remember. I think it was one of those heart in your mouth moments.
I have gone to the mountain.
I have come back, and I am cleansed, and I am clean. And
It
I
was
just
a
remember.
watershed moment, yeah.
Ornstein was easy to take out. Let's face it. He was a little, he was a bit of an annoyance. He was like a wasp, and if you knew how to take him, he was fine. It was Smough, and the number of times I think I got my patter down, my movement and stuff so well down that Ornstein would come shooting in on, and I would sidestep to the right, and he would come shooting in, and I'd turn round and I'd knuckle him in the jaw, and he'd go ow, and then I'd hit him a couple of times, and then I would dance around the pillar fast enough to get away from Smo, but just keeping kind of Ornstein round me, then just jumping in, smacking him a couple of times, using a couple of pyromancy fireballs to get him down. But it was Smough's jump attack that always got me, And I remember the time I did it, I used up all my estasis. I'd had a really, really bad... Do you know you do a boss and you have either a really, really good start or you had a bad start? It was a really
you run
bad...
in, you're 3 Estus down in the first 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, come on!
I know, I'm just like that. What? I feel like I'm taking shots in Magaluf and this is just going to end up the same way. But yeah, that was it. I was like down to a sliver of health and he just... I don't know how it did it. I think he ended up... he didn't glitch, but he kind of... The random number generator was in my favour because he just seemed to keep on doing the same kind of smash and back move, and he kept trying to do his shoveling the snow move towards me, but he got caught behind the pillar, so by the time he recovered I was able to jump in and hit him back. I just got him and that was that. And then but funnily, so that was that. It was that was the standout moment.
So no temptation to jump back to demons on here. Did you kind of wait for Dark Souls 2?
Do you know what? I started jumping into demons when it was free on PS Plus.
Tell me about demons. So this was after dark.
Yeah.
How did you get on? How did you process it? Was there this degree of kind of right? Let's see what comes before. Let's see the beginning of the lineage.
Yeah, let's see what this is. But let's have a look at your history. Let's have a look at your parents. Let's see what they're talking about. Let's see what they're let's see what kind of custard creams you have. Oh, it's cheap, smart price ones. Oh, we'll just go away somewhere else. No. I just haven't gelled with Demon's Souls. I don't know if it's because every time I've gone back from playing kind of another game, from playing Dark Souls 3. I was on it the other night. Because I went, okay, let's just have a shot, let's see what happens. I ended up in the Valley of Defilement. I think I've done one...
That's a beauty.
I've done 1-1 and 1-2, I think. And then I went, oh, what's down here?
It's a harsh move to take, man. Oof.
Yeah,
I'd say 4-1 is your next place after.
But you say that, but I don't know what that means. I've no idea. That's the other thing. When checking out Demon's Souls, and folks say, "Yeah, I think. Do you know what my route is? It's 1-1, 1-2, 4-1, 3-2." 3-2, 2-2, 1-2, 3-3-3. It's like, it sounds like you're doing a mic test.
Football scores.
Exactly.
I just think with 4-1, because there is a degree of challenge in there with the rolling skeletons and stuff.
Yeah.
They cough up so much in the way of souls that you're improving your gear. And I was going back and forth between that and 2-1, I think, because 2-1 was giving the way to actually upgrade the swords as well.
Yeah. So
going between sort of one and the other seemed to be making me stronger, making the weapons better, and 5-1 is a beast to go to.
4-1's your way forward. And don't forget, that's the first time we ever played Souls together, wasn't it?
Yeah.
With no microphone, with lots of wild gesturing.
I think, because on PlayStation Access the other week, they had a thing with villains that aren't bosses, but are sort of absolute swines in themselves, and they had the giants from 5-1 and 5-2, who disturbed me in a very childlike way, because they seem almost out of proportion, that you can never quite tell the distance that they actually are from you. And if you're talking about that poison swamp in 5-2, getting to a little patch of ground where you can move at speed and then dodging them, they're just living nightmares. They're horrible in the best way.
I've Demon's Souls is one of these things I want to go back to, but I think the longer I leave it, the more I'll bounce off it, to be honest. But I am willing to try and give it a try.
What are you doing when we finish recording?
I've sometimes just finding that moment when kind of life and seasons and mood just mesh. I know that very well.
I've got work to do after this.
Boo.
I've actually got work as in job work. I've got somebody I need to phone in another country, which is basically the other side of the world. And I got the choice. They says, well, we can do this 2 ways. It says, I can phone you tomorrow morning first thing when it will be 7 o'clock for you in the evening. It says, or I can phone you at 11 o'clock tonight where it will be 9 a.m. your time. And they went, yeah, let's do the 11 o'clock at night one.
That seems like a move.
Yeah, that was nice. Thanks for that. Thanks for that, mate.
So were you on the train of hype for Dark Souls 2 prior to release, or did you?
Yeah, of course. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the beta for that. I mean, I was on the beta. I played about with it. It had a little bit of the lighting engine going. It was.
This the Huntsman's Cops one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
had a
just
whole lot of the lighting engine going.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was stunning, and I remember actually at the time sticking my mobile phone down and recording me playing it, just so I could remember and go back to it later on. But I was in from day one. I mean, that was it. It was like, well, Dark Souls was still, there was still a lot of love. I was still going back and jumping in there. I had like multiple builds. My issue with Dark Souls 1 was after I'm not a big fan of it after Anor Londo.
Yeah,
So
I think a lot of people sort of paint it as a true classic, but sort of forget about your Blight. Well, Blight Town always comes up as like being a bit of a bad one, but Lost Isleth and stuff is a pain in the balls.
Yeah, it never kind of, I mean, that was when, and it's controversial to say that I really, really like what Dark Souls have done in general with the series. But to be honest, at the beginning of Dark Souls 2, I wasn't a big fan of it because I went to play a game that I expected it to be, and it seemed to be a different game. And there's a lot of mechanics that had changed. And I also found certain parts of it to be very difficult indeed. I remember hitting the Pursuer. I mean, let's face it, Capra Demon's a baptism of fire. I mean, you go in that and there's people that will tell you, people will say, I did Capra Demon first time, and they're like, you lied. Nobody did it. I did it first time.
My hand's up.
Yeah, I did it first time.
Yeah,
but I struggled with the Pursuer as well, but you get the thing with folks saying that the start of Dark Souls 2 is too easy.
Yeah.
And then they will say that the Pursuer was too difficult. But I remember Tamor Hussain, when he was at CBG, did a live stream of Dark Souls 2, and he was parrying the Pursuer every single time. He just nailed it. And I was like, I am not good enough to do that. I couldn't, and it was just every time like a boosh, and then no.
So beautiful. But no, I bounced off that for a bit, because the other thing as well, that when the original Dark Souls 2 was, there wasn't that many kind of humanity kicking about. Your little effigies. So when you were going, this guy's an actual, I don't like him, right, I'm going to go and, let's go and check him out, let's ring the help bell, let's get somebody in to help me. And then you realise that human effigies were a very, very scarce commodity.
But I think that was to kind of funnel people into offering themselves up to help other folks, and then really getting that sort of that wheel going through. Because I think in Dark Souls, a lot of people did go through it without realising the benefits of being human, or either that or shunning the negatives of opening yourself up to invasions. And I think that was a conscious decision to get people kind of helping others out. And also, once you did start doing that, and say at Forest of Fallen Giants, if you camped out in front of the last giant and just kept helping people out, you get a ton of souls that you could chuck into improving yourself. And I think they schooled people in that in a really subtle and clever way that I don't think they got credit for.
No, I think it was certainly when you went and faced off against the what are they called? Is it the Sentinels?
Oh, the Ruin Sentinels.
The Ruin Sentinels.
Oh.
And
The 3 golden golfers.
Oh, me.
oh yeah. I put the game down at that point. The first time round, the first time when Dark Souls 2 came out, and I was just like, I don't know if I'm liking this much as I like Dark Souls. And I remember doing a Vine at the time, much further into the game, where I was getting smacked down, and I had me getting killed and me switching to ripping the Dark Souls 2 disc out, putting the Dark Souls disc back in, and landing down in front of and landing at the outside the gargoyles at the church, and going, that's better. Yeah, the Sentinels, kind of the Ruined Sentinels, kind of ruined me for a bit, and I was just like, I'm not sure I've got the skill to kind of take on 3 people at once.
But if you've done Ornstein and Smough,
that was
it's not a million miles away from Ornstein and Smough, but with just kind of an extra person there and different stuff going on.
I think at the time I don't think I was in the right. I hadn't got my skills up to the level. I think also with Ornstein and Smough, I was used to how their attack patterns were, and I knew where to not influence the AI, but know where to move and stuff like that. And
I think people were generally in quite a strange frame of mind for Dark Souls 2, because they played the first game, so it became like muscle memory, this beautiful muscle memory.
Yeah.
They'd absorbed all of the lore and the lore videos, and sort of the conversations kept coming on, and they kept becoming more enjoyable, and the group kept alive and kept buzzing. And then they came to the unfamiliar with Dark Souls 2 and hated the game for being unfamiliar, and because the story and the lore wasn't immediate, because nobody minded that you hadn't got the stuff like with Dark Souls 3 where the Illuminati had got it early, and people just dismissed the story as well. And it's seems a strange one to me that because so many people came onto Dark when so much had been mined, I don't think they realised that those of us that were starting Dark early, and I don't mean to sound kind of like, I was there at the start.
No,
but with Demon Souls, there wasn't a lot of lore there. It was like this amazing atmosphere and like a wonderful game to play in.
Yeah.
That was the same as the way that I started with Dark, and it was only later when you've already started doing like brilliant storytelling videos, and EMV was at the start of his pomp. All of that started to grow, and I think that everybody knows where I am with Dark Souls 2.
It's well documented.
Once I got once I got past that, and once I realised how Dark Souls 2 wanted you to play, I used to go in from then on and stick my sign down and get summoned, and then go around with somebody into, it was weird. I remember a few times, not every time, but sometimes just putting a sign down on a level I'd never been to, and
learning it,
and having a wander around with somebody who was either trying to get through a boss or who hadn't been through that level themselves, and it was almost like they were expecting you to know where you were going. But it led to some really kind of interesting kind of playthroughs where you were both, it was like wandering around with a companion, but you were both scared at the dark at the same time, and you didn't know when to jump and not when to jump. Because normally if you do the summoning, you've got somebody that's going ahead and they're pointing at this thing and they're doing this and they're laughing and they're shaking their head, or they're doing all the gestures of the day to kind of help you on your way. And it led to a different experience. It was almost like, hello, I'm lost. Oh yes, hello, I'm lost too. Let's go and kind of explore it together. It led to some interesting places. And then by learning that, by the time you did it 2 or 3 times, because then I remember being stupidly leveled up for Dark Souls 2, the vanilla one, when I was going through, because I was doing so much co-op. But I think it led me to kind of enjoy the co-op side of the game more than maybe the single player side of the game an awful lot more, because I was doing so much help. And And then the DLC arrived for Dark Souls 2. Now, I reviewed the DLC for Dark Souls 2, and the editor at the time said to me, he says the guy that does our Dark Souls reviews, he can't do it, but I know you play it. He says the issue that we've got is that he's gone into New Game Plus, so the chances of him getting through the DLC any time at all are just going to be minimal, because do you want to try it and see how you get on? So I had a character, I think, who was at the very beginning of the game, and so I rush played it to try and get to the first part of the DLC.
Because was this when the first portion of the DLC had come out?
Yes,
when it was kind of drip fed over those 3 months.
Yeah, it was the Sunken King. It's going into Shulva, and going from because when I finished Dark Souls 2, I finished it. I went into New Game Plus. I played around with it. I considered starting a new build. I kind of mucked around with it a bit, and I left them there. And then I got the opportunity to review the Sunken King. And the first thing that hit me about the Sunken King was, this is very, very Dark Soulsy. And it was also very, very puzzly, and it was also making you think a lot, and it wasn't very, very corridory, and it was quite clever, and it made you think an awful lot more. And I really, that was the point that I went from enjoying Dark Souls 2 to going, I really, really like you. I'd like to take you home with me for a long time, please.
Ironically, the first part where Yu Tanamura sort of came from fixing the original game and getting it shipped, coming onto it when it was broken, and the first point where he started as solo director, and I seriously no idea how he did those 3 pieces of DLC. They're just, Jesus Christ.
It was just, I just remember running up and going, oh, there's a switch. Oh, it looks like a switch, it's a pillar. Well, I'll do what I'll do with any Dark Souls thing. I'll try and press X in front of it. If that doesn't work, I'll just hit it. So I hit it, and I remember letting out a little kind of as this huge,
brilliant,
as this huge kind of like the platform came up and it knocked the 3 guys to one side, because I think because I ran to get into the first part. You had to defeat the Rotten, so I saved up enough money to get the cat ring, got my vitality, got my life points, got my life up enough so I could survive the fall. And it wasn't like Scholar where you had to find the stuff. That was open. I mean, you could go in, you defeated the Rotten, you were into that DLC. But it was that point there, and I went, oh. And remember, I was reviewing this, so I had to rush play it. So I sat there for goodness knows how many days solid, just trying to play it through. And because it was review, there wasn't anybody kicking about to play it with you.
That's harsh, man.
I know that pain so much.
And because there was this, the servers were kind of online, but not really online. There wasn't really anybody to kind of summon. Oof. And it's really hard when you're doing that. Yeah. But then I got back to the part where you're thinking, I'm back in kind of the beginning part of Dark Souls 1 where I've got that love, and I am going round every corner with a shield in my hand, like going round by inches, basically.
I think it was interesting that there's an extra accessibility to Dark Souls 2 that perhaps wasn't there in Dark, and that was a criticism from a lot of people that enjoyed Dark. But with New Game Plus and the sheer genius of the stuff that they added to New Game Plus,
yes.
and really shook things up with that, and also the 3 Crowns trilogy DLC, it was almost like, oh, you think you're good at Dark Souls, do you? There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Here, take that. I'm going to flick an elastic band at your head, and it's a little sharp and it's a little bit painy, and we're going to see if you're going to cry with us. But I remember, because I was like, okay, well, the first thing I did is I went, well, I can do New Game Plus. That's fine. I can do it as well. I'll try it and get through it on New Game Plus. And I hadn't played kind of the New Game Plus, and I remember going up the corner towards the pursuer, when you actually fight him before you get to for reals, and there's a red guy standing there, and I'm like, what are you doing there? You're not an invader. You're an actual.
Hello.
You're an ironclad boy, and that was all the way through, and I think that's why I went, okay, I've got to start again. I've got to do a new build, because if this is what this is like, goodness knows what the next one was like. But
I think one of my favourite things of Welcome to New Game Plus is where you arrive back in things betwixt, and suddenly you've got like all the the eagle guys surrounding you. Like, what?
Doesn't someone throw an eagle at you?
It's just like, yeah, you've got that circle of guys just like sending eagle squads. He's like,
yeah,
what? Was this here first time?
It's a new character. You're sending new characters at me. What are you doing? It's new characters.
Amazing.
I was just fantastic. I really I think the new game side of Dark Souls 2, the vanilla one, was the one I kind of went back to because it was so much fun, because it was like playing the game again. Yeah, you were tough. You look like you're hard as nails, mate. Here you go, try and take these guys on. And it was a lot more fun.
I still remember the guy. I don't know if it's exclusive to Scholar really, but we'll get into Scholar in a moment. But the guy who sits outside the bonfire just before the Iron King, he's got he will then spin those kind of horse buffalo things, spitting fire out, will then launch at you. And he's basically protecting you, tagging a bonfire.
Yeah,
who's harder than the actual boss. He's phenomenal.
He hangs around there, so you try and get near the bonfire and try and activate it. It's like, nah, you can't do that.
Nope.
You got to get rid of him. Go on then. Let's see how you get on. But yeah.
So did you play through the rest of the
All
DLC at vanilla point, or did you then come back to that with?
No, I then reviewed the other two pieces, which was interesting because what I did is while I was waiting, I then hit by the time the review came out on launch day. So what I did is I went back and I did what I was doing, which was I was sticking down my summon sign outside the various points, and I was raking in the souls by that point. And then I was just going back and just generally leveling up. And there was a couple of decent bits of kit. So by the time it came from Iron Keep, I think I jumped about 30 odd levels. I remember hitting Shova about 67, and by the time I'd got all the way through, I was close to I was early 90s at least, if not mid 90s by that time, just with a sheer amount of quite simply just with the sheer amount of kind of helping I'd done people. And because I knew, I mean, that boss is just amazing. The dragon is just outstanding. But then and I spent many a happy time hanging around that bonfire, just helping people out and just showing them how you would take the guy down, and it was a lot of good fun. The Iron Keep is my favourite of the three because of its verticality, and because
just incredible. I agree,
and
also
the shortcuts as well. Just because once you get to a certain point, it's very, very easy to get up and down, and the teleporting bonfires. I know your Dark Souls stalwarts will say it's not something that they liked or enjoyed, but it was good fun. You knew once you'd made a level that you'd passed the test, and then you'd earned the right to travel between the different bonfires. So the Iron Keep, I went all the way through it, and I loved every second of it because it was just because of the verticality of it, because of the almost like the there was one point, there's the tower where you cross the big metal chain, and it's where you get invaded and
By Maldron.
Maldron, yeah.
Oof.
And you're kind of like, oh yeah, come on, I've done this. I've been playing a game. I can get you. And you hit him a couple of times, and then he runs down the stairs.
I love that.
Are you like, what are you doing? And of course you try and follow him, and the next thing you know, you've got kind of like people chucking bombs at you. You've got the guitar knights, the guys that look like they're holding guitars.
Wow. Yeah.
Kind of swing it on fire, and they've got like they bring out their battle guitar crossbow thing. It just looked like that from a distance. I says, like, because he's carrying it on his, well, that looks like what is that, a harp or something he's got? Oh no, it's a really big bow, and he's throwing fire arrows at me. But yeah, so there was that, and then of course you get down to the bottom, and then you've got to stick an ember in the or stick a you got to take the bit of the one of Manus's daughters out as well. And then down the very, very bottom you get a sword.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
And the joy of going, oh, that's his sword, is it? I wonder what will happen if I put that in my left hand.
And
oh
yes,
I've seen people doing having that sword and doing the chariot boss, and when the chariot comes round, they do an Artorias flip over the wheel. It was sheer awe for somebody to sort of go, oh right, I wonder if I can do this, and then achieving it and filming it was just wondrous.
Also, and then they rip like a sick drink of like Mountain Dew or something and do a pose to the camera.
Also, a nice little sort of nod and a wink towards the original game, rather than being heavy-handed. I know some folks aren't that keen on, or think that the lore stuff is quite heavy-handed in the second one without going anywhere. I think one of the Gavs was saying that on Don't Give Up Skeleton, but I like the subtlety that's involved in Dark Souls 2 in that regard.
It wasn't. Do you know what? I think it wasn't trying to do callbacks. I think it was trying to make you kind of happy and enjoy it. And then when you got the sword, you were like, right, it's ass kicking time. But then what I had to do is I had to go all the way back to Betwixt and respec my stuff because I didn't have the right stats for holding the sword, and I was determined to hold this sword. So
it had to be said as well, they make you work to get that sword.
Oh, yeah.
That journey down that little turret thing is fraught, and that is a reward.
Yeah, you've got, as I say, your little floaty banjo guys who are shooting arrows at you. You've got the guys shooting bombs at you. You get down to the bottom, and there's the daughter of Manus that you've got to take out as well at the same time. And then down the bottom, there's another couple of knights hanging around that jump out of the ground when you get down at the bottom. So you get down to the bottom, and you're like, chest, awesome.
I mean, some would say you have to brave the abyss to get it, right?
Yeah, you do certainly go. Well, it was nice with that second one as well, because if the first of the DLC had changed things up again with the puzzle element, the verticality had certainly changed things up again with the second DLC.
Yeah.
And it was so easy to feel lost in that, and the sheer relief of finding a bonfire was incredible. A wonderful callback to the original in that regard.
And then you had some of the hardest bosses, or one of the hardest bosses in the game, who I spent hours fighting this guy, this Mr. Knight and his fumes. His fumes of justice.
Even with help, he's a piss bastard.
Do you know what I did last night or the night before when I jumped into Demon Souls and then jumped right out again? I went, okay, because I had my PlayStation 3 up and running. I says I'm going to jump into Dark Souls 2, the vanilla one, and made my way down to the bottom. It's just the level's just called the bottom of it or something like that, the base. And you get out there, and I put down, I says, just for a laugh, I'll put down my summon sign. And I got summoned. Because I got the crown, you see. So I'm...
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, so, I went through the final quest and got the crown. So it doesn't matter how many times I die, I'm never hollow. I can always summon, I can always kind of get some. And I put my summon down, and I got summoned. I couldn't believe it. This is not a scholar. This is the Vanilla Souls version of 2 on the PlayStation 3.
Which these days you would assume would be dead at this point.
Well, that person's probably been rocking back and forth for like weeks, like just picking at the odd crumb off the cake and going like, "I will get on with my life when someone finds me."
He's probably, do you know, at the point where it's like, say, 1:45 in the morning, and you're just like, one more go, just one more go. He's been doing that since 2014.
But then you help him once, you fail, and then you don't put your sign down again, and just imagine him going, "Where did you go?"
Mind you, I'm at the point on New Game Plus on Scholar where I'm 99% complete on the game, and I've got stuff to do in Crown of the Iron King, and it's just so tough. I could do with summons there, and I don't know if I'd pick them up, to be honest. It's yes, unfinished business there.
Be a call out on the good old Twitters to see if anybody could help you. Absolutely.
So Crown of the Ivory King, then let's tickle onto that beauty.
It was a lovely ending to the series of DLC, and it was semi kind of unexpected, because this is why I was one of those salty little people who on Twitter, when Dark Souls 3 was getting spoiled, was kind of like going, "Oh, what are you doing? Why are you doing this with the marketing?" Because the marketing for the DLC was, there's going to be DLC, guys. Okay, thumbs up, good. And that was kind of it. Because so I went into this and I was like, and you go up and you arrive and you go up a bridge and you come to a door, and then you've got the view of everything, and then you go left and you do the anti-Derek Zoolander and you turn left when you should have turned right. And then you go in there and you get the loveliest surprise of your life and go, "Oh my goodness." And then again, because at the time what I was doing, there wasn't any signs down, so I was running in, I'm trying to figure out how I'm meant to be taking this person out, and realising there's no way I'm going to do it. And then you realise obviously you can go right instead. And it was just, there was a mixture of playing, a little bit of playing with your mind, because there was at one point at the beginning of the game you're going through and you're going, those people are sitting down, do I go near them and attack them, or do I just kind of leave them alone? So you've got like almost like the Frost Maidens, the Frost Witches kind of sitting down doing absolutely nothing, and the whole place is kind of desolate, and you're wondering, well, what's actually kind of happened here. I semi enjoyed it and semi got a little bit frustrated with it, but I think that was because I should have just been a bit more patient and should have taken my time and not tried to rush it so far. It does have, for me, one of the most spectacular boss fights I have witnessed in a Dark Souls game, with the
Burnt Ivory King.
Yes.
Because the thing was with that, even getting to the points at various parts of that level where you walked into a room and there was a knight on a chair and they stood up and they disappeared, and you just thought, that's enough.
Yeah.
Then walking towards what you knew was going to be a boss battle, and seeing them in the chairs and them stand up, and you having summons as well if you've brought them in, and just going, oh my god, I'm going in with an army. And then dropping down into it is metal as fuck. The little puzzles and the portals are fantastic as well when you figure out what's going on. It's a mass battle anyway, and then old Lado walks in with the curtains pulled back, screaming "die" like he's in some sort of metal band. It's so good.
It was just the way it called. It was like, okay, you want a boss fight? Here, we'll give you a boss fight. It was like you were sitting in the cinema, you're watching the film, and the hero, who has been trying to get along with his little fellow gang members, and this is the point where everybody's coming together and we're like, okay, it's on, let's do it. You're jumping down the hole and you can see them coming down with you, and you land, and then it's just kicking off. And yes, you're right, if you got summons there...
The thing was, though, with that initial DLC especially, that so many people didn't play it that it was almost a complete surprise when you were doing any of this stuff, because nobody was talking about it, and which was bizarre.
I don't get it. It was fantastic.
Also, I'd have to kind of highlight a frustration of mine at the time, but in the best way possible, and something that Lado over there did first time on his Scholar run is Electric Ponyland, which I just think is just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
There's just
I had to rethink my entire build for Electric Ponyland.
I've spent a little bit of time in Electric Ponyland, but I've never spent. I've been to Paradise, but I haven't been to me. I think it was the point where it was like, I'm kind of running out of time here. I've got to stick some words down on the paper here, and I've got to get this kind of in, and then I could go back to it. And
it's a bit that takes you to it by getting into a coffin and going down a ravine like a toboggan. Well played, Dark Souls. Well played.
Hats off to you, sir.
Because that's something people do, isn't it?
Honestly. Well, not since the court case. Apparently I ruined that funeral.
Well, it's like the nice call back to the start of the very start of the game when you get into the coffin in Things Betwixt and your knob falls off. Just like, something's wrong.
It's a shame they highlighted that, because the stories of people getting to about 3/4 of the way through the game, taking their helmet off and realising they're a woman.
I didn't realise it was so long.
Oh, it was so good. That happened to me as well. It's like, why am I chasseing? Look at me.
So
where did it go?
You said you went from Dark Souls to Vanilla to Scholar.
Yeah, I did the DLC and then I took a step back and then I went to Scholar, and by that time I was so kind of, this is wonderful. I'm really, really liking this. So when Scholar came out,
so that over Bloodborne then, that was the one that you headed towards.
Yeah, Scholar, definitely Scholar, because it was already kind of slightly familiar, but instead of it being, it was beautiful to look at. I remember putting on the PlayStation 3 and then putting on the PlayStation 4 and then flicking between the two of them. I'm pretty sure I took a photograph at the time of being outside the Giant's bonfire or something like that. The keep. Yeah, I took a photograph of what the difference was in the resolution, and just Scholar being buttery smooth. And also there are slight changes with the increase in the number of effigies that you got, which I thought made it a lot more fairer. You went from a system where you were, if you were struggling in Dark Souls, you could head down, say, to the depths, and you could farm humanity with your silver serpent ring or your gold serpent ring and hit the rats and do runs like that, and at the same time you could get summoned and do some gaping dragon fights, yeah? So you always usually had a massive amount of humanity on you. And then in Dark Souls 2, I felt that they were kind of in some ways taking away your choice if you needed help by making you, go ahead and help people as well. As I say, I usually went in and kind of helped people anyway. So then increasing the number of effigies, I felt they kind of went, okay, yeah, we've heard your feedback. We understand that maybe there are some of you who do want a little bit of help now and again. So let's kind of do that. So that was kind of, that was kind of cool. Just the frame rate, some of the things that they done with some of the bosses, people give it rubbish because the Heidi Knights or the Hades Knights you're there and they're static, and then when you defeat the Dragon Slayer they all of a sudden kind of get out of their slumber and come and get you. Why is there a dragon outside, Ornstein's little church? Well, it's not Ornstein for starters, because this takes it's not.
It's no real Ornstein for life.
Played.
I was thinking about this, right? And he's an old dragon slayer. And the whole point of this is to say that, in listening to what CJ said in the past about Dark Souls 2, and I think we share an awful lot. Dark Souls 2 is about a decrepit land. This is a land that's falling into disrepair. Everywhere you look, there's things that have fallen into the sea. Things are wrecks. Things are the very fabric of the entire place is falling apart because they're tired of fighting this power which has slowly corrupted the king, that's taken over the land, and every single part of Dark Souls 2 is fighting against this, yeah? And this is just one of the statements about this. You have got a dragon slayer sitting in hiding essentially in a church because there is a big huge flipping dragon outside and he can do nothing about it because he isn't strong enough anymore. And
well, yeah, because he's an old dragon slayer.
He's an old dragon slayer.
He's like an old postman. He doesn't deliver posts anymore.
He's sat there and he's going, what the hell I'm doing? You're not going in. This isn't a vengeance fight against Ornstein. Whatever. This isn't a callback. This is you going in and beating up an old man who knows he is done and finished.
Which is a wonderful motif for the story in itself.
That is.
Although there's an interesting thing with Ornstein now with the lore of Dark Souls 3, where seemingly this the Dark Souls 3 motif of, well, what if this happened instead of this? They have Ornstein walking away from Smo and going to the Nameless King and surrendering his armor, his spirit, whatever it might be. So there's this kind of question mark as to of Ornstein as to whether he kind of transcends a lot of the
there's that thing about him saying he became a dragon, didn't he? You know.
Well, there's that, and with him kind of there's a lot of sort of question marks around that, and I think that's one of the, I don't know, what feels like one of the immediate motifs of Dark Souls 3. This level of but you know the DLC seems to throw a little bit more light on some of the questions surrounding that. So we'll see. I still have a lot more love for Dark Souls 2 Scholar than I presently have for Dark Souls 3. What did you make of the remix then? The stuff that was added and changed, not just the enemy placements, but it's interesting with you saying about venturing into new lands as a summon to figure out sort of how they were there. I think that when they brought in the summon NPCs who had so much personality, that was almost this wonderful kind of middle ground. And also when you did get to Electric Ponyland, essentially summoning your Justice League to go through the waste to go to the King's Palace was just phenomenal.
I think they took advantage of the extra power that they had with the PlayStation 4 at that time, and put it to good use. And Scholar allowed them to sit down and say, yeah, well, obviously the DLC's been, a lot of people like the DLC, so let's make some changes that we want to make with Scholar as well. I never had a problem with it. It just, for me, it was like going back and playing Dark Souls 2 again, but being fresh at it again. So you were up with your shield again. You didn't know what was happening. You were slightly scared of what was going on, and then when you did, it was a case of you weren't just doing a slight remix of Dark Souls 2. You were doing it all over. In many ways, you were kind of doing it all over again because you were never sure of what was happening. And then you had like the lighting engine coming in as well, kind of.
Oh God, yeah. And that first moment with the fat lad in Forest of the Fallen Giants who kind of lights sort of the magic torch and turns that skeleton area blue and like wanders off. It's like, and actually being pursued by the pursuer throughout the entire game is just wonderful. And the places that he turned up, I still remember Pat and his reaction to some of that when we were like, I've made a mistake.
Yeah, it was jumping down to where the belfry is, wasn't it?
Mm. Or
I'll meet you there in a second. Just hop down the ladder and piss off.
The classic, what are you doing here?
hang on, did I not just... I just had a really, really tough boss battle here, so I'm just going to go back to the... Oh, right, okay. You want to fight, don't you? I don't want to go on. The number of times I must have spent a reasonable amount of time just taking this guy out, not because I wanted to go back the way, because I could transport between the bonfires as I wanted to, but it became a kind of, oh, this is how it is then. Come on, I've drawn a line. Let's take it. And just taking him out just for the sake of it, just to have him kind of disappeared. I think that Scholar is everything that Dark Souls maybe was or is, as opposed to, I think that it allowed them to maybe kind of properly finish it off, or do exactly what they did. There was a little bit more kind of influence to it. I really enjoy it. It is a game that I still will go back to quite happily and poodle about with for a couple of hours. And it was the game that I played more than I played Bloodborne.
So let's jump to Bloodborne then. Did you do that? You did that after Scholar?
I kind of did it and then stopped it. Do you know what happened? Bloodborne arrived, and then it arrived with a couple of issues with regards to like loading times and stuff like that. And also, I've always been a sword and board type of person, and I just didn't mix with Bloodborne at all. You know, it took a long time for me to stop the fear and learn how to just get in there and start kind of splitting heads over it.
It is a very different... I think it's more of a different game than I think people realised it was going to be, with the focus on, you know, your parries, your movement, your aggression over the more patient aspects of Souls. I think people weren't ready for it to be as aggressive as it was.
I think I got as far as... I think I got up to Vicar Amelia? And I played that for a while, and I think I took out Vicar Amelia, and then I was in the next... Where was I? The Forbidden Woods. Is it? Yeah, I think it's the Forbidden Woods, and I got stuck in there for the longest time until I put it away for a bit. And it was round about the time I think you and CJ were talking about CJ's involvement with Bloodborne. And you were saying, I'm smashing through this is the greatest thing ever, and CJ's saying, listen, I'm not convinced. I'm going back to Scholar, and I'm going to be playing Scholar instead. And,
I mean,
the most frustrating year of my life.
Yeah, I like the fact that the podcast kind of divvied at that point, because it was
nice callback.
It was going on instinct for one. It was as not being chills and kind of calling it as we saw it. Plus, you know, for personally, Scholar hit and became very, very personal to me, and hit a point in my life where I just fell into it, and it still means the universe to hear, like Bearer of the Curse, and to land into Majula and just hear those chimes and the wind moving through those the tents, and like the waves against the shore. I just find it's peace for me being there. It really moves me. And
it's more peaceful than Firelink, isn't it? I mean, Firelink's like a step in the journey, isn't it?
I just think it's beautiful. It's genuinely beautiful. And also, you know, the places that you can go from there, I don't think he gets credit for, because you've got, you know, four or five options that you can mosey on sort of into, and on with. And again, you've got your skeleton graveyard, and you've got your journey into the town in the same way as you did with Dark. Some people will bounce off Heidi's Tower of Flame from there and say, oh, this is really hard, and then others will go to the Forest of Fallen Giants and find it a bit easy. So
it's funny how harder Heidi's Tower becomes when you beat the boss, because your confidence
does now,
confidence after the first time, you're like, yep, here we go, this is easy, and then you go back in afterwards and you're going, oh, okay, and these guys are the Heidi Knights are kind of hitting hard, and it becomes another kind of level you kind of need to take on and jump into. as I say, I stepped away from Bloodborne for a bit and mucked around with Scholar. I think I almost did another kind of run through with Scholar just for a laugh, and then I played about with a couple of other games which were okay, and then I fell in love with Syndicate, AC Syndicate for a while, and I played through that. And then one night, I don't know what it was, I think Gary and Cole from Bonfireside Chat were talking about Upper Cathedral Ward, because I'd been playing along with them when they'd started their season, because I put Bloodborne to one side because the loading times just hacked me off and the game hacked me off, and I was quite annoyed that I'd kind of jumped in and hadn't waited until, because it was obviously a new IP, so I kind of went, I'm going to pre-order this, and I kind of think I made a mistake here. I should have waited. This isn't the game. Everybody else is loving it. It's just not hitting with me. I'm going back to Scholar. I jumped into Syndicate for a while and thoroughly loved that. And then, as I say, Gary and Cole were talking about Upper Cathedral Ward. And I went, you know what? Let's crack on and see where we get. And then I just concentrated and knuckled down, and from Forbidden Woods, something just clicked. I don't know what it was. I think I changed. I don't know. It wasn't a change in mindset or anything. I just got a lot more aggressive, got the parry down, started, I guess, doing what I was doing in Dark Souls 2, which was summoning people and helping them, and then, helping them, finding out the area, and then taking on the bosses lots and lots of times, getting lots of echoes, leveling up my character, and having a damn good time. To the point where I prefer, in terms of ranking, Bloodborne is kind of up there with Scholar, but it's not quite there. So Scholar's my boy, because it's on my PS4 just now. It's sitting there. It's a digital copy. I could go and put it on once I've finished chatting to you guys, and just have a little lap of honour or whatever. Bloodborne is something that what I'll do is I'll install it, and then after a while I'll uninstall it to give space to something else. Dark Souls 3 I've got on disc, so I can put that on kind of any time. But yeah, it's not that I don't hate Bloodborne. I love Bloodborne. But it
did you eventually finish it then?
I finished it. Yeah, I got through it. The DLC I had. It took me so long to finish the DLC that I'm not fully completed it.
I haven't finished the DLC for Bloodborne either.
Then I'm just having it. I'm having it sitting there now. I'm wondering if I should go back. And I don't know if I will.
Sounds to me like we need to raise a posse.
Sounds to me like we should. We'll get the codes.
Because I'm pretty much at that point anyway.
Well, we could jump in. That would be good fun.
Ooh.
So Dark Souls 3 then.
Dark Souls 3.
Spilled said beans.
Dark Souls 3 is funny because it was the first Dark Souls game that I didn't pre-order.
Ooh, interesting.
Quite simply because I wanted to leave it. Do you know what? It was the Bloodborne thing kind of made me think, this is possibly going to come out with really rubbish loading times and potentially a couple of bugs. And I think it'd been the year of the bug and the year of the kind of the patch so far, that it seemed that there didn't seem to be a major AAA game that had been released that hadn't had to be patched in some way in order to get it working again, or to get it working up to a certain standard. And a couple of other things interfered with it. On its release date, I was going on holiday for 10 days, and then after that I was going somewhere with work, so it meant from the release date I was only going to really play it for about 5 days or something like that, for a month. So I sent it to a friend of mine. I got the disc, I packaged it up, and I lent it to a friend who had never played Souls games, and I sent it off to him, and I said to him, okay, you can have it for a month. I'll get it back in a month off you. Have a play with it, see how you got on with it. He played it, I don't know how many times he played it, but he DM me on Twitter and says, "This is just still not the game for me." Mm-hmm. So I sat down with Dark Souls 3 and had already had a couple of areas. I was because I had left it so late to play it. People for some reason had automatically thought, well, it's worthwhile, you can just jump in and spoil whatever you like of it. So there was a lot of stuff going about, and it was just a bit poor. But let's face it, everybody's had the conversation about the market, and I don't want to go back into there. I'll just sound like the bitter old 41-year-old man that I am. I'm not sure about Dark Souls 3.
In what regard?
Whether how much I like it, or if it still has the hooks in me, because I have it. It's sitting there ready to play, and I have taken a character all the way through to the end, and I've got a character sitting in New Game Plus, which I started New Game Plus and stopped because it just seemed to be a bit harder, and they didn't seem to have done anything with New Game Plus, which I was very surprised at.
Yeah, I think Dark Souls 2 is a bit spoils you a little bit from that, because there seems to be so much focus on New Game Plus. Wee bit of a joy, especially not just the extra additions they've done with the surprises in there, but also the way that also the souls that the bosses give you as well, which I think is a really, really neat little kind of nudge and a wink to this place where it feels like myths have transcended the original land and kind of twisted and turned into lies and half truths, and but also some genuine callbacks to that time, and I just thought that was really, really sassy and really wonderful attention to detail.
Don't get me wrong, I like it. I mean, I like it as a game. In fact, if I was putting down a list of every game that I've played this year, or a game of the year list for games that I've played, Dark Souls 3 would be right up there. But that by no means it's is better than the previous games in the series. And I would have I don't know. I am sounding like a grumpy old fart.
No, it's fine. I say the same thing. Like, I think it's a good game, but it's when I made my list of my top 5, my Souls games, it was the one I knew was going to be at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, as I
unquestionably,
say, it's Scholar, Bloodborne, and then maybe 1, and then maybe 3. But I kind of, it's kind of like that. I mean, that's horrible that Dark Souls is like third in the list, but third in the list of such greatness. I mean, come on.
Well, here's the thing, even like an average Souls game is still really, really, really good.
Yes,
I think Dark Souls 3, especially with the way that it's told its story, and it's kind of leaned and twisted, and its lore has still really to play its full hand. And I was listening to Easy Allies the other day, and the last thing they did before game trailers closed down was they changed Bloodborne from a 9.5 to a 10,
that's sweet.
because of how good the DLC was and how it rounded off all of those questions, just how finessed it was and how it perfected the package. And I think that I'm curious to see where they go with this extra stuff, and how they tie up the stories, and maybe Miyazaki is a wonderful troll, and maybe there's a certain part of this that he is messing with this a little bit.
The sad thing about Dark Souls 3 is it didn't have the confidence to tackle its own story, and I think
that may be
coming, But I think it's. And I heard this has been banded around so much now. I think it's become common. A common thing is that everybody. I've said it. I've heard Gary and Cole say it. I think I've heard you guys say it as well. Is that Dark Souls 3 is the Force Awakens? That
was me.
Yeah, it was you.
That was me. That was my thing.
Yeah. Except I don't despise it, which I do with the Force Awakens.
It's
but
like, hey, remember a Dark Souls? Here is one of them.
For me, I thoroughly enjoyed Dark Souls 3, and there's lots of the lore stuff that I really really enjoy. There's a few questions. There's some stuff that I'm not keen on at this point, like the way that they seem to have numbed the legacy of Solaire from what we expected or what we thought. But they've still got cards to play, so it's.
Well, let's face it. Look what they did with the DLC from Bloodborne. They kind of said, okay, this is your end game, and this is why this has all happened from the beginning. So they played like the final card, and I'm just wondering if there's going to be an awful lot of things clicking into place. But it is, in some ways, for me, the DLC is like watching, say, a 3-hour film and then saying there's 15 minutes left of the film, and everything that you expected is going to get tied up in those 15 minutes. And I'm wondering kind of what's going to happen if this DLC is a supplemental to what the story is, and then the final bit is going to be, right, you're heading into the deep or wherever. I don't know.
I think it's difficult to compare a game that a lot of folks have spent over 100 hours onto a film, and then DLC that people would still spend like 20 hours plus with to 15 minutes. So I'd be wary of that comparison. But they have the benefit of the doubt purely because they're batting on an absolute full average with regards to DLC. Yeah. They've never let us down with DLC at all. And if anything, they're the shining lights for DLC in an industry where people are selling season passes for absolute rubbish, and trying to pitch it up. Whereas, when they said, "Oh, there is DLC, 2 lots of DLC coming," no Souls fan kind of went as if everybody went, "Oh, they always treat us well with this, so go for it." I don't begrudge them. $16.99 you can get the PS4 version for, and the Xbox version, I think, with a little bit of credit.
I'll see what happens. I'll see what happens. I want it to be wonderful and fantastic, and I just hope that it ties up everything or leaves enough ambiguity to give people the lore hunters of this world chance to kind of go ahead and write up the fantastic kind of theories that they kind of had before, which I'm kind of looking for.
I wanted to make them all wrong.
I kind of have this.
I take a glee in that.
Don't know. I kind of have this version in the back of my mind that they've. Whereas we rescued the legacy of Artorias in the first game, a man that had travelled the abyss, had been corrupted by it and was left a savage, and yet when we return to the main game, Dusk remembers Artorias as being the person that saved them all, that you rescued his legacy. And I just think it'd be kind of cool if either we rescue the legacy of Solaire, or if I know Gary from Bonfireside Chat is very reticent about playing extra cards from the original towards the end of this, but I quite like the thought of a Solaire rescuing his own legacy, as now they've numbed him down to not the fallen god as we thought he was, but just an ordinary man, a man that then picks up that legacy and walks on with it. I like the storyteller in me likes that a lot.
The man that became the legend, and how he became the name that he was, and at the end of the day he was just a man that inspired a kind of a legacy and a myth, and that kind of sits quite well with me as well. There
was a pitch years ago for when Marvel's 2099 was going to get a bit of a fritz and a bit of a do-up, and Mark Miller and Grant Morrison put together a load of pitches for renewing the line, which never got taken up. They got things like an Iron Man that was a Stephen Hawking type character who built the armor, and basically his wheelchair became this walking man who became a superhero, and nobody expected it because even though he was a genius in a wheelchair, nobody thought he could become a superhero. And they got a Captain America pitch there with a guy who would inspire an army and he was basically a man that found the Captain America shield. He had no powers whatsoever, but nobody thought that he was excuse me, any less than Captain America sort of joining them and coming to save them. And that I thought was fascinating. And they were all building this. This is going a little bit off tangent, but they were all building this into a pitch where it's a land where, like, you know, the Avengers had long since fallen, like years and years before, and you know the corpse of Giant Man was kind of still fallen in the river and stuff. And amidst all of this, I think there was an invasion that happened on Earth, and like this big war begins, and then Galactus turns up to throw an extra spanner in the works. And there was a point in this pitch where you just heard this boom, and then this boom, boom, and Giant Man gets up out of the river and starts duking it out with Galactus, who's never had a being like stand up to him, and you just get like Giant Man literally punching the fuck out of Galactus. And it's like Marvel at that point just didn't take it any further, but it was a pitch. My word, I love that sort of stuff. So touching into Dark Souls 3 DLC, we got a new trailer this week, and have you seen it? Have you seen the original? Any thoughts?
Sounds like Painted World, doesn't it? There's a scrap of a picture. There's the bridge.
Well, it's not the Painted World. Apparently, it's a Painted
World.
Well, they've made one, so like they could do another one, surely.
Of course they can.
Yeah, just paint another one.
Left the brush hanging about and stuff.
The magic brush, like penny crayon.
When I paint and stuff, you know, I always get told by my wife, "Will you clear away your brushes?" There's nothing to stop maybe somebody coming in and doodling something else while I'm otherwise distracted. So I can see that happening.
You painting your world and hiding your things from the gods.
Hiding people with tails, are you, sir? And usually it's not. It's usually just a landfill, because it's an easier place to put it. You know, if you went travelling into my Painted World, you'd just be walking about and going, "This place is full of milk cartons. This is rubbish."
It sounds like a terrifying euphemism.
It certainly is. I'm kind of interested. They've obviously got the move sets there already. They seem to have the big Corvian type beast. He looks really kind of quite interesting.
The Flagellator.
Yes.
Oh.
We shall see.
Carry on. I'm just getting some Benylin.
Oh,
I'm running out of throat.
See, now the thing I've watched the recent trailer, the gameplay trailer, and like they've got the shades of stuff that we recognise in there. Like it's the 4-minute gameplay one. Okay, so you've got a big wolf running around.
I know.
You've got a woman with a scythe, all dressed up in white, and it's like it's cool, and I'm watching it, and it's cool, but at the same time, I'm also sitting there watching it, thinking, like for me, like Dark Souls 3 lore, I don't engage with it. I don't really enjoy it. I don't find it that enthralling. Like I didn't click with it. It feels a bit like, I said this to Gary the other day, it feels a bit like fan fiction to me. Like I have not gelled with Dark Souls 3 at all.
Do you know what? See tonight, right? And the thing that we were going to discuss. And I went away and I wrote a big theory about the crabs.
Yeah.
And it's the
I've been wanting to hear this crab.
It's the biggest load of nonsense going, and it's probably
you're probably quite close to the truth.
I actually wrote it down. So I mean, we've been going. We might need to. I don't know what you want to do if you want to, but basically, my theory of the crabs is two crab families, where there's
like what the crab whales and the crabsteins.
Let me read it out quickly, okay?
Okay.
You've got Tony and Scylla, okay?
Crab.
And Tony is a construction cutter who works in the deep and was responsible for partly building the Cathedral of the Deep. And he was known for his intricate back shell work. in several places in the Cathedral of the Deep there's little plaques and there's little marks with the letter T on it because he helped it.
That's so Tony.
He's got Scylla, who's his wife, she was just a cutter. She was used for cutting cloth and stuff like that. So they've got 14 children. They've got Larry, Barry, Gary, Louise, Sandra, Kelly, Felly, Deli, Jelly, Belly. They ran out of, obviously, imagination. Claus, Nipper, Sheldon and Krusty. Now Scylla's sister, she's been a well-to-do trader. Her name is Pam, and she's married to Big Claw John, who had some mysterious connection with the Cathedral of the Deep, but was known for being a top squirter. They've got 3 kids. They've got Tarquin, Franklin, and Big Claw John Jr. Now, Tony and Scylla, for a long time, have been saving up all of their money for to buy a holiday in the Road to Sacrifice. And on the other side, Pam and Big Claw John just decided to go to Smouldering Lake because it was hot and there was a really big kind of nice big millipede ride that they heard was like kind of lots of fun. And basically what happens is that they go to Lothric and we join them on the last day of their holiday where unfortunately Pam and Big Claw John seem to have lost one of their children. So the crabs themselves are not actually involved in anything to do with the lore. This is just 2 siblings, and one of them is jealous of one another over their choice of holiday, and there's a bit of one-upmanship involved. There you go. That's the...
Wow. So you get these via item descriptions off of the claws that you pick up when you kill the crabs, right?
No, it's Miyazaki that he's calling back at 11 o'clock.
The claw of Belly the crab.
It's going to be in there. I'm actually, if you look, I'm co-writer on the second part of the DLC.
I was going to say, so Dark Souls 3 DLC is
it's known as the Crustacean of the Deep, and it is about how this family and civilization have been waiting to take over. They've been waiting to come over and hope that the flame gets extinguished because it allows the deep to rise and the crabs can claim their proper birthright. Cool. As long as obviously Pam and Scylla manage to stop arguing with each other, and Pam apologises for what she says about their mum, basically.
It's a classic story. I mean, I hope this as well. I hope that the DLC will clear up the mystery of that one crab that's got lost in Farron Keep.
I don't know. I think he's always had a tendency to run off that one. You know, whenever they just turn around. You know, Big John Claw's always shouting at him to come back. He's just a troublemaker. And if he got warned. He says, "Son, if you keep running away, you're going to end up getting covered in a ball of skeletons, and I won't be there to rescue you." So that's what it is.
But whose parent didn't say that to them, crab or human?
I know. So that's my theory.
Right, now here's the thing, right? I like your theory. Your theory's good. I actually think your theory is as good as the lore in some bits of Dark Souls 3. And come at me with your fire, internet, because I'm ready for you.
Right, I have my own fire, and it is a breakdown of the DLC stuff. I've done some work, Pad.
You written some notes?
Yeah, funnily enough.
I threw mine away ages ago.
Imagine preparing.
My note was, "It's my name."
Yeah. So, aside from the main trailer and the new one, Mary Kish and Dan Crab from GameSpot had a 10-minute hands-on with DLC at Tokyo Game Show. I also had a look at commentary on the gameplay from a gent called Prod on YouTube, which was really cool. So yeah, in the DLC we see mass enemies attacking at once, quite hard to see in the snow, which gave me a bit of an Electric Ponyland feel. And there seemed to be an attack which was putting lava on the ground, which I don't know. I haven't done pyromancy in Dark Souls 3, so I don't know if that's there already or if it's something new.
It's very Quelaag, isn't it?
There were knights blowing on torches and creating flamethrowers who moved far slower and much more zombie-like sort of through the area. A sort of boss that, well, I'd say boss in inverted commas, that looks a bit like he's straight out Lords of the Fallen. sort of tall boy, eats his greens. Didn't like the great sword being used on him, and which staggered him, in fact, which was kind of cool. Prod noticed as well that in the background of that fight in the new trailer is the giant from the first trailer, the one with the massive axe, who did that area effect, and he's coming towards you with a wolf, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
There are collapsing areas that are in there. Got the skeleton bugs with lots of blood on the ground. Blood looks lovely against the white, like jam on bread.
Oh, the skeleton bugs are gross.
Jam on bread.
Oh, they're ugly.
So they did say, Mary Kish said that the wolves roam in packs, but they're not hard to kill, but they are incredibly fast. And perhaps kind of you spin to win weapons are going to be really handy against those. Dan said that he didn't lock on, and that kind of helped him within those fights. The big boss battle at the end, it looks like there's someone familiar, but the guy in the mix that parries isn't just an enemy, it's someone who calls the wolf in and is actively involved in the fight. And when that fella sort of parries the player, Prod slowed it down, and there's a lion that shimmers out after the parry, which is really cool. Like this little sort of lion logo that sort of leaps out, which is really cool.
That's kind of cool.
The voice at the end is, that voice I presumed was the painter from the first trailer. But she says, from what I can tell, prevalent father, we have no need of thy flame. 'Tis only the flame quivering at misguided ash. Please avert thine eyes. Now I don't know if she's talking to that Corvian that looks like Ozzy Osbourne, that's got a fat arse stuck in a chair that's sort of hitting you with like a Lord vessel, or if she's talking to, say, a Gwyn or something like that. Because if she is this version of Priscilla, maybe there is a connection to Gwen, or the flame quivering may well sort of relate to this slightly off timeline where different things have happened to the familiar. So that makes me curious towards the DLC as to what it might be hinting at, I guess. So yes, I did listen on headphones as well earlier, on rather bassy headphones, might add. The sound is extraordinary, kind of echoing off the mountains and the rocks and thundering through, and you really hear like the shimmers of the snow falling when kind of a boom sort of scatters at the end. So yeah, it looks fun.
But you say it's like the version of Priscilla, right? Okay, this is my
speculating.
Issue. Well, yeah, but we've already got one in the place along the secret bridge. Like, there's already a Priscilla in Dark Souls 3. Do we need another one?
Well, it's
it annoys me a bit. It's like, come up with a new thing.
Why does it annoy you?
It annoys me. Come up with something new and weird. Like,
I like something new and weird. They may well be trolling us a little bit.
I like the Flagellator. I think he's cool, but do we need the scythe white lady? Because that's like, I don't know.
The story yet.
It depends what they do with it, and it depends on the convergy-wergy side of things as well.
I don't like the convergy-wordiness.
You see, I'm antagonistic towards this pad, whereas I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt, and I'm excited about it.
No, see, I've been catching back up with Von Fireside Chat, and it feels like every time there's an answer we can't do, it kind of gets to convergy-wordy stuff. Like, I think that's crap. I hate that.
Yeah, but they've always said on that show that time is timey-wimey, going back to like the very first. Yeah. Sort of Dark Souls.
But at least it kind of makes sense. Whereas in here, like, there's things that blatantly don't make sense, and it's like it's convergy-worgy, and like
that seems quite familiar.
I don't like that. That's the answer that a lot of people. Oh, it's worlds converging. It's fine. It's like no. Like, the actual levels are good, but the way they've mushed them together, I don't like. Like, things don't make a lot of sense. And I hope the DLC addresses that. But I don't know. Because the last few Souls games, the DLCs have been great, right? They've been great, and they've sort of built on and worked on the lore in the games. They've kind of taken things and run with them. I don't really know what they're going to run with in this one, because I don't get as much out of the lore of Dark Souls 3 as I would have out of the previous games. I don't have that connection to it. I mean, I'm trying, like I say, I'm listening to Bonfire Side Chat, I'm watching lore videos, but it's not grabbing me in even close to the same way that even, back when everyone hated Dark Souls 2, the lore there was still interesting, I was still engaged. And
it's a double-edged sword though, isn't it? Because you can understand that they had several years where they were banging the Dark Souls 2 drum, and the DLC came in with its own particular set of lore, and a lot of the feedback that they got was that, listen, we wanted Dark Souls 1.5. Take this 2 nonsense away because we don't like it. And obviously now that people have got their 3 and there is a lot of 1.5 in it, people are kind of like, alright, well actually, why aren't you giving us something new instead as well? So, I mean, you wouldn't like to be From, would you? I mean, you can't please...
You can't win.
You can't win, can you?
All you can do is be true to yourself and what you want to do. And
do all the new stuff.
Face it, Miyazaki's got the benefit of the doubt on this. But I said it before, but I do think that if it was anybody else's name on this and he wasn't involved, people would be smashing the shit out of it.
Yes, I think in some ways. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Because it would be the easy target in the same way as for me it was with Dark Souls 2.
That was the Dark
Souls. I saw that, and all the B team stuff and all that.
Yeah, but I mean, for the DLC, I'm not going in looking for story answers. I'm going in looking for fun time in a snowy land.
But that's always been an element of the Souls games. Like I say, the Demon Souls was just amazing environments and incredible fights, and the lore wasn't a really big part of that. It was the atmosphere and the end, how much you enjoyed it to play. Dark Souls, when it first arrived, we didn't know that was any different and that it held any more than that. And if you're going into the DLC thinking, this area looks amazing, those enemies look like they're going to be corking to fight, that's enough.
Mm-hmm. And then on the other side of it, you've now got the coin where you have essentially an entire section of the Dark Souls community that live for the lore, that live for item descriptions, that live to stop and look at a painting in a room with a silver knight to see who's on that and who it actually represents and how it can tie into the story. So if you're Miyazaki, you're sitting there going, I know I can provide the gameplay because I'm getting pretty good at doing this now, but I also need to remember that I've now got a team now sitting there going, right, here's your item descriptions, this is what you've got to write. There's probably an entire web of post-it notes with arrows back and forward. They've probably had to write out Dark Souls 1 and put all the connections in, then write out parts of Dark Souls 2, which is probably why they left a lot of the lore connection out for that. And then Dark Souls 3, they've got a big huge spider web to overcome with that as well. They're going to bring in the DLC and they're going to have to say, right guys, how the hell do we tie this all together, and how do we make it work, and how do we keep the gameplay guys happy, but at the same time let them not hate us because of what we're doing with the lore. And I think
we're still yet to see the first game from Miyazaki's tenureship as president. So because it was still the old guard that greenlit Dark Souls 3. I mean, he had said that it was his last, that it was the last Souls game, and I'm not sure if that was down to translation, but he's clarified it even this week as saying that it's the last Souls game he's doing, but he's not ruling out one of his members of staff doing Dark Souls 4 if they have a good enough idea. Personally, I'd love to see Yui Tanamura come back to the series.
Yes.
He put a broken Dark Souls 2 together, got it shipped, was responsible for the Three Crowns trilogy, as well as polishing things up with Scholar, and I'd like to see Tanamura from the start under his own directorship. And if we're looking at Three Crowns trilogy and Scholar as the guide, I'd like to see what he'd do under his his own back.
Would you like to see him do something with his own IP though? I mean, I
Yes.
see the issue that not the issue, but I can see straight away the pitchforks getting sharpened and the torches getting lit if they say, right, okay, you go and do a Dark Souls version, son. I reckon if they handed him something like a blank slate and went, tell you what, you have a good idea, you kind of do what you want.
Yeah,
You know,
I see that, but I also feel that I think he's a brilliant man, and I think he's got unfinished business. And I'd quite like to see a Dark Souls 4 that does like the second one, that has maybe hints and myths and twists that could relate to the first game, but tell absolutely its own story.
Yes, absolutely. I'm totally with you on that.
And I love playing the Dark Souls games. I would like to see a Dark Souls 4, but using Dark Souls 2 as the template within telling its own story and those little hints and twists and myths, to me would be wonderful. I'd love that to pieces.
It's having its own confidence again to step out and say, okay, we're going to give you a Souls game, but it's going to be a Souls game across another fractured kind of universe, which is based around the same place, and it's having the confidence to be able to do that. And I think after maybe the slight kind of dissatisfaction some people have felt with Dark Souls 3, I think that warrants them saying, actually, well, let's do it then, and let's just see what happens. They've got 3 million reasons because that's how many units Dark Souls 3 has sold. So they're probably going to sell another 1.5 million DLC easily, or if not more, because people will want to know what's happening. So we'll just see. Either way, it'll be interesting.
I think the important thing is, if they're going to hand it over to someone, hand it over to someone who cares and doesn't turn it into a multiplayer zombie survival game.
Yeah, but
I'm not angry about Metal Gear Survive. No.
Yeah, but I think that whatever happens with Dark Souls 4, it will be the first under Miyazaki's tenureship as boss. And he said that if the idea is good enough, it will get greenlit. And I feel that maybe under the previous management, having a massive seller in the way that From had never had before, they want to continue that. But you've also got the money behind From now. Is it Kodansha, like a really cash-rich company? So I have every confidence that if they do that next step, it will be for the right reasons.
And maybe hire some better marketing guys.
Well, I still think you have Bamco on board, be just the nature of Dark Souls, but maybe Miyazaki will have more say in what happens, and we can see the same sort of subtlety that Sony put into the Bloodborne marketing.
Yeah.
Seeing as we're here as well, Dark Souls board game, are you on board with that?
Nice.
Well, thanks.
Yes. Oh yes, I am. And the Bloodborne card game is out, I believe, next month.
Is it?
Yes.
That snuck up.
That's rocked Pad's world.
Oh, piss. Well, I've not been practicing my painting for my tiny figures. I've not been practicing that. I've not been picking up figures here and there and everywhere to practice on. Oh no, not me.
No. There's going to be no degree of terrified when you start painting those figures.
Maybe save your discussions, Mr. Stardust, and we shall drag you on to where we do not allow wizards.
That's true.
Ooh, that's cool. Then. So we're not wizards. Why the podcast? Tell people about it, sir.
We started in February. It started because I was telling a couple of folk at work I played board games, and they just were saying, all right, so what spells do you do? Do you fight dragons? Do you roll lots of dice? And I said, well, we do lots of things, but we generally don't we don't play as wizards. And it kind of went, okay. That kind of stuck in the head, and it became a bit of a joke at work. And I decided with one of the guys at the group, I said, shall we try this podcast thing? And that was February 13th of this year that we've recorded our first episode, and now we're on episode number 17. And we have a small seem to have a small but lovely following, and we've had some wonderful people on. We've had Gary Butterfield on. We've had Paddy on, who was fantastic. Is coming on again. And we obviously had Jeremy Greer, who was on too. That
was the worst episode, wasn't it?
So far.
Love you, Jeremy.
We do love you, but you are the worst. But we've had, I've been very lucky because we've managed to kind of get some reasonably big names within the board game scene, like John Gilmore, who did Dead of Winter. He come and spoke with us. We just had an interview with Mantic Games kind of go up, who are one of the biggest board game manufacturers in the UK. They did like Dungeon Saga and Dreadball and Dead Zone and Kings of War, and they were founded by a couple of guys that left Games Workshop, so we had a good chat with them. We basically, it's myself and another guy called Colin, and we try to have the view of, if we're talking about a board game, we kind of look at it from, I've never played a board game before, to try and make it as accessible as possible. Because we listen to a lot of we've listened to a few podcasts, and our joke is there are many podcasts out there about board games, but we wanted it to be, if somebody was talking about, say, I don't know, Settlers of Catan, or we weren't automatically assuming that the person that was listening knew what we were talking about. So we do, if we're explaining a game for like the first time, like a hidden movement game or a resource management game, we actually take the time to explain it. So our aim is to make it interesting enough for people that are involved in the hobby and have been for some time, but also make it accessible for people who haven't played a lot of board games or are trying to get into the hobby, without listening to a podcast and saying what are you talking about. So and be just really genuinely surprised by the interest that we've had, and it's been very, very it's been very humbling to have people who you've never spoken to kind of interact with you on Twitter and have genuine conversations, or DM you, and I've met a lot of decent people through it, and I've met a lot of people. I've actually met a couple of my kind of heroes in the industry through it as well, which has been good. So and we're growing and we're having fun with it, and it's been a real good laugh so far. And you can find us through the usual channels. If you just Google We're Not Wizards, we're pretty much everywhere now, iTunes and Stitcher, and you can get us on Twitter. And if anybody follows us and if anybody wants to have a chat with us, then yeah, we'll have a chat. We love talking about it. But I'm glad that we're both glad that we kind of pressed the button and kind of started it. So it's been really, really good fun. But yeah, and we're definitely dragging Paddy back on again.
We can talk about paint.
Dragging Paddy back on. So which would be, in that regard, how dare you? In that regard, which would be your biggest golden chalice, that game which you seek to find, and why does it hold such heavenly status?
I'm just trying to think. I've managed to be extremely lucky and kind of play most of the games that I want. There is a game out there at the moment which is called Catacombs, which is a dexterity game it's like Dungeons and Dragons, except it's a dexterity game using wooden pieces. And I have recently managed to get myself a hold of a copy of that. So I'm an extremely
You've been after one of them for ages, haven't you?
Man, yes I am. So that's that. The thing with board games is that there's usually somebody that can get you a copy of something, and I always have a viewpoint that a board game's there to be played. You'll never find anything kind of sealed on my shelf. There's no point in doing that. I want to play them and experience in them and enjoy them. You wouldn't kind of buy. I wouldn't buy, like, say, Dark Souls 3 and keep it sealed on the shelf. I mean, what's the point of that? So.
Because I noticed from a recent Rab Florence article, which I'd read and enjoyed, but read from a point of ignorance, that there were a lot of great Games Workshop titles that they're taking back from the people that currently publish them. And he was sort of highlighting the ones to try and pick up before they go, and what makes them special and stuff.
The worst thing about that is there will be people that will be buying this for the point of making money instead of buying them for the sake of enjoying them. And we had the question asked on our most recent episode, actually, which went out yesterday, Pimp. And that question was asked, should I go out and buy Games Workshop games? And my reply was yes, if you can, and if you don't get scalped. But whatever you do, make sure you flip and play them. And that's my response.
Yeah, Rab was saying the same sort of thing in that article.
You know,
well.
If you're getting a Fury of Dracula, get your mates together and play a thoroughly enjoyable hidden movement game. If you're wanting, if fighting amongst the stars is your bag, then get yourself Forbidden Stars. If you fancy a card game based around the Warhammer universe, then you've got Warhammer Conquests. But they're there to be opened and they're there to be enjoyed.
Cool.
And that's all I gotta say about that.
Boosh. Well, kind of to draw us to a close then, as for us stuff, we may well be a little more regular from now on. On the one hand,
like a bowel movement.
Yeah, but
a pleasant one.
Made of diamonds. Pandora.
That wouldn't be pleasant.
No. Well, not until it's out. To force it out like an old nutty bar made of
Skittles
jewels.
would be fine.
Yeah, let's not go on to Donald. So on the one hand, a battle plan is in place, but next we're going to be over on Bonfireside Chat talking with Gary about our 5 favourite NPCs. We recorded it.
Sparks will fly.
I think it should be up by the time this episode comes out. So if you missed it, time to go over and disco listen to. We had a good time, didn't we?
We did. It was great.
We had a good natter.
Gary's brilliant. I think Gary's wonderful.
Yes.
He's not as wonderful as you two, though.
Oh, you sweet talking lad.
You tart.
Because I've thoroughly enjoyed. I just wanted to say before I forget, because I'm old and ignorant, but I thoroughly enjoyed being on here tonight. And thank you very
really
much for having me on. This has been. When I first started listening to you, I never would have thought, one day I'll actually be on chatting with these fine gentlemen. So this is kind of like, I'm going to bed a happy and contented man. But not yet, because I've got to phone Australia.
Well, thank you for thanks for joining us, Revatar.
That's great, mate. I don't mind if I do. I'm just going to go and get myself a nice cold beer, and then I'm going to phone this boy on the phone, and we're going to have a conversation, and it's going to be fantastic.
I don't think our podcast is blocked in Australia, just like Argentina and places like that. So apologies to Australia. Apologies. Thank you again, sir.
Oh no, it's been a pleasure. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
And before we go, you usually sing your outro. Could you sing us an outro?
Yeah, I could do that. The flames, they may guide us, they ignite us, they incite us to inspire. We are embers, we are cinders, we are flames amongst the stars. We are many things, we are sweeties, but mostly we're twin humanities.
I'm on
Good night,
the floor.
everybody. Goodbye.